I don't remember what song was playing that night, only that the lights were low, her laugh was softer than the music, and I shouldn't have stayed as long as I did. She looked like someone who didn't belong in a place like that, too polished for a dim bar with flickering bulbs and sticky tables. A woman who'd learned how to smile without meaning it. I noticed the faint line her lipstick left on the rim of her glass, the way her wrist turned when she set it down. Small, perfect gestures, the kind that make you forget to breathe. I wasn't supposed to talk to her. I was just killing time, waiting for a friend who never showed. But she caught me looking, and instead of pretending not to notice, she held my gaze. For a second too long. "Stay for one drink," she said. Her tone wasn't flirty, more like an invitation she'd regret, or a dare she hoped I'd take. So I did. She told me her name, but it barely registered. I was too busy trying to match the warmth in her voice to the coolness in her eyes. She asked questions, not to make conversation, but to keep me there. Every time I thought she was done, she'd tilt her head, glance at my untouched glass, and ask something else. "You don't talk much," she said after a while, resting her chin in her hand. "I don't want to say the wrong thing," I answered. That made her smile, a small, knowing smile that said you already did. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was thick, alive. The kind that hums quietly under your skin. Her perfume lingered in the air, not strong, just close enough to notice when I leaned forward. Her fingers brushed mine once when she reached for her drink. It could have been an accident. She didn't move them right away. There was something about her stillness, the way she seemed both present and far away. Like she'd spent years holding herself together, and tonight she was just tired. "Do you always look at people like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to remember them." I didn't answer. I couldn't tell her that I probably would remember her, the shape of her hair falling against her cheek, the quiet sadness in her eyes. When she looked away, I noticed her hand trembling slightly as she lifted her glass. She laughed to cover it, a little too quickly. I wanted to ask what was wrong. I didn't. She wouldn't have told me anyway. Instead, I asked, "Do you come here often?" She gave me a look that felt almost amused. "Only when I forget where else to be." There it was, something fragile beneath the surface. Not loneliness exactly, but a kind of quiet that comes after too many years of pretending to be fine. I wanted to keep her talking, but the words in my throat felt heavy, unsure. So I just listened, to the soft clink of her glass, to the rhythm of her breathing, to the silence stretching between us like an unspoken promise. Then, a shadow moved behind the bar, someone calling her name. She turned her head, startled. "Is that?" I started to ask. She didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to explain, but she only said, "Don't go yet." And for a moment, everything stilled, the noise, the lights, the world. Her eyes met mine again, and whatever she didn't say hung in the air between us, fragile, dangerous, beautiful. Then the door behind her opened, and someone stepped in. Her expression changed, just a flicker, but enough to know that whatever this was, it wasn't supposed to happen. The man who stepped through the door called her name again, quieter this time. He was older, maybe her age, dressed too neatly for a place like this. She glanced at me, then back at him, and something unspoken passed across her face. "He's a friend," she said after a moment. But the pause before the word friend stretched too long to believe. I nodded like it didn't matter. Maybe it shouldn't have. But it did. He left after a few minutes, no argument, no scene. Just a quiet conversation I pretended not to overhear, and then he was gone. The air between us changed when the door shut. She sighed and looked at her half-empty glass. "That was my ex-husband." I didn't say anything. She added, almost absently, "He still thinks I'll change my mind someday." Something about the way she said it, calm, tired, like she'd run out of ways to explain herself, made me want to reach across the table. But I didn't. We talked again, softer now. She told me she used to teach art before moving into management. Less paint, more paperwork. she said, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. She talked about how quiet her apartment had become since her daughter left for college, how the silence felt different when it wasn't chosen. I told her I worked part-time, studying architecture, how I liked old buildings because they carried secrets in their cracks. She smiled at that. Maybe that's why you looked at me like that earlier. You think I've got cracks. You don't hide them very well, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes met mine, sharp, searching. Then she laughed, but there was something softer behind it. The bar was emptier now. The light above our table flickered, bathing her in a glow that made her look unreal, too alive for the dullness of the room. She leaned closer to say something, and her shoulder brushed mine. It wasn't accidental this time. I should go, she murmured, but she didn't move. Her perfume mixed with the faint smell of rain from the door someone had left open. I could feel the warmth of her arm, the way her breath hitched slightly when she realized how close we were. Why did you stay? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. I hesitated. You asked me to. She looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for a reason to believe that was the only answer. Then she reached for my glass, fingers grazing mine. The contact was brief, but enough to leave a trail of heat. You should be careful, she said finally. People might get the wrong idea. I smiled. About what? About me, she said. Then, quieter. About us. The word us lingered in the air, fragile, uncertain, but real. Outside, thunder rumbled somewhere far away. The bartender wiped the counter and looked away, pretending not to see. She drew in a slow breath, stood up, then paused, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Not a goodbye, not yet. Just a touch that said this isn't over. And as she walked toward the door, she glanced back once, not smiling, not speaking, but with a look that promised we'd both lose a little sleep tonight. I didn't plan on seeing her again. But 2 nights later, I found myself walking past the same bar, pretending it was coincidence. It wasn't. She was there. Same seat. Same drink. She noticed me before I could turn away. You again, she said, smiling like she'd been expecting me. I told myself I'd just say hello. Maybe 1 drink, then leave. But she shifted her bag off the stool beside her, wordlessly inviting me to sit. The air between us carried something unsteady, not quite tension, not quite comfort. Her hair was pinned differently tonight, one loose strand brushing against her neck every time she turned. I couldn't stop looking. She noticed. You're staring again. Maybe I'm learning, I said. Learning what? When to stop. That made her laugh, quiet but real, the kind of sound that feels like a secret. We talked in half sentences. About nothing, really. About everything that wasn't supposed to matter. She told me her ex called again. I told her I hadn't stopped thinking about her since the first night. Her hand froze halfway to her glass. She didn't look up. You shouldn't say things like that. I know. But you mean them, don't you? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Her eyes lifted, slow, cautious, and for the first time, I saw fear behind them. Not of me, but of what she might want to. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A name flashed across the screen, Emma. She hesitated before flipping it face down. My daughter, she said softly. She worries when I'm out late. Something twisted in my chest, not jealousy, exactly, just the sudden awareness of the world that existed beyond this dim light, beyond this table. I wanted to ask her how old her daughter was, but I stopped. The question felt too close to something neither of us should name. She must have read the thought on my face. You're wondering if I feel guilty, she said. I didn't answer. Maybe I do, she added. But I don't feel wrong. The silence after that stretched thin, fragile as glass. A friend of mine, Tom, walked into the bar then. He saw me first, waved, started heading over. I felt her body stiffen beside me. Don't, she whispered. Please. I turned slightly, blocking her from view. Hey, Tom, I said, too loud, too fast. Didn't see you. He paused, gave me a look. You good, man? Yeah. Just finishing a drink. He shrugged and moved on. When I looked back, she was watching me, eyes wide, breathing shallow. You didn't have to, I know, I said. But I wanted to. Her hand rested on the bar, inches from mine. Close enough that I could feel the tremor in her fingers. She looked down at them, then at me. This is dangerous, she whispered. I know. Our hands brushed, just once, but neither of us pulled away. She leaned closer, slow enough to stop if she wanted. I felt her breathe before her words. Tell me to leave, she said. I couldn't. And even though we didn't kiss, it felt like we had, in the space between what we wanted and what we couldn't have. The next time we saw each other, it wasn't planned. It was raining, not the soft kind, but the kind that makes the whole city blur. I was leaving a late class when I saw her across the street, standing under an awning, arms folded, eyes fixed on the ground. She looked smaller somehow, or maybe just tired. I crossed without thinking, nearly slipping on the wet pavement. She looked up when I called her name, surprised. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, half laughing, breathless. She hesitated, then said quietly, trying not to go home. Something in her voice made me stop smiling. We ducked into a small cafe, nearly empty. The lights were low, the air warm and thick with the smell of coffee and rain. She pulled off her coat, rain-damp hair clinging to her neck. I couldn't look away. Do you ever regret it? I asked. She frowned. Regret what? Not saying things. When you had the chance? Her eyes lifted slowly. You mean like right now? I swallowed. Yeah. Like right now. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The rain hit the windows harder, a steady rhythm that filled the silence between words we weren't ready to say. She leaned back, studying me, really studying me, as if trying to find the line between innocence and intent. You shouldn't be here, she said finally. Then tell me to leave. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She just looked at me, eyes glassy, jaw tense, until I stood and moved closer, drawn by something I didn't trust but couldn't stop. I reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered longer than they should have. Her breath caught, quiet, but sharp enough to hear. This isn't right, she whispered. Then why are you shaking? Her laugh broke, soft and uneven. Because I don't know how to stop. The space between us collapsed, inches, then none. Her hand found my chest, not to push me away, just to feel the heartbeat there. You make me forget how old I am, she said, voice trembling. You make me forget everything else. I could smell her perfume again, faint, familiar, the scent that followed me home for nights after that first drink. The air felt heavier now, as if even the rain outside had paused to listen. She looked up, eyes flicking between my mouth and my eyes, torn between gravity and guilt. If we do this, she began. We won't, I said, though neither of us moved. Her hand slid higher, fingers brushing the back of my neck. Liar, she whispered. I started to answer, but the door opened. A gust of cold air, a flash of movement, a voice calling her name. She froze. It was the same man from before, standing there, drenched, looking between us. Her hand dropped from my chest. My throat went dry. The rain kept falling, louder now, as if to drown out the silence that followed. The man stood at the door, dripping rainwater onto the cafe floor. His eyes went from her to me, then back again, slow, deliberate, sharp. I've been calling you, he said. I turned my phone off, she replied, too calm, too quick. He looked at me then, not with anger, but recognition. You're the student, right? I froze. She works at your university, he said before I could answer. Administration. The world seemed to tilt a little. The coffee cup in my hand suddenly felt too light. She didn't deny it. Just lowered her eyes and whispered. You weren't supposed to know. The silence that followed wasn't simple. It was the kind that fills every inch of air with meaning. You knew? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. I didn't want it to matter, she said. But it does. Her ex, or whatever he was, gave a bitter laugh. You always did pick the wrong kind of trouble. Leave, she said, turning to him. Maybe I should talk to your dean instead, he said. Something in me snapped. I stepped forward. You don't get to threaten her. He stared for a moment, then shook his head. You have no idea what she's capable of. And then he left, just like that, leaving the door open behind him, rain pooling on the floor. The cafe had emptied out, chairs stacked, lights dimmed to closing hour. Only the hum of the espresso machine remained, and the rain's faint echo against the glass. She was still standing near the counter, staring at the door long after he'd left, the door that now felt like a border either of us could cross back through. I waited for her to speak. She didn't. Finally I said, Tell me what you want me to do. Her eyes flicked toward me, tired, wary, and something softer, something breaking. Don't make me say it, she whispered. Why not? Because if I say it, she breathed, then it becomes real. I moved closer, slow enough to give her time to stop me, but she didn't. She just stood there, fingers gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Look at me, I said. She did. And that was all it took for the air to change, for every inch between us to turn into a question neither of us wanted to answer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You'll regret this someday. Maybe, I said. But not tonight. She took a step forward, close enough that her coat brushed my sleeve. Her perfume was faint now, rainwater and something warmer underneath. Her hand lifted slightly, uncertain, then stopped midway as if afraid of its own intention. I caught it gently, not pulling, just holding. Her fingers trembled once before settling against mine. You don't know what you're asking for, she said, though her voice had already betrayed her. I'm not asking, I murmured. I'm choosing. Her breath shivered out, her forehead resting briefly against my chest. For a long second neither of us moved, the world outside quiet, our silence louder than any confession. I spent years doing what was right, she said finally, her words muffled. Staying in lines, keeping my name clean, pretending that was enough. And then you. She stopped, pulling back just enough to look at me. You make me feel like I missed something I can't get back. Her eyes were wet but steady. I brushed a thumb across her cheek, tracing the trail the rain hadn't caught. You didn't miss it, I said quietly. You just found it late. Her laugh came out like a breath, half joy, half disbelief. Then everything slowed. She leaned closer, eyes searching mine, hesitant but no longer hiding. The space between us narrowed, inches then none. And just before it happened, before the moment could tip from wanting to something irreversible, she stopped. Her hand pressed gently against my chest again, not pushing me away, just holding me still. This, she whispered, eyes locked on mine. This is enough. For a heartbeat, I almost believed her. Then she smiled, small, sad, knowing, and stepped back. I understood then. It wasn't rejection. It was recognition, that what we'd found wasn't meant to be claimed, only remembered. She picked up her coat, met my gaze one last time, and said, almost tenderly, Go before I change my mind. And I did. But the warmth of her hand stayed with me, proof that sometimes, the closest you ever come to someone is in the space where you stopped. I didn't see her for days after that night. Every place I went, the cafe, the bar, the hallway near her office, felt like a reminder of something unfinished. It wasn't heartbreak exactly, more like the ache that comes from touching something real and knowing you can't hold on to it. Still, I kept walking past that bar again, out of habit. Or hope. And one evening, she was there. No pretense this time. No drinks, no noise, no one else around. Just her, standing by the window, watching the street lights turn gold on the wet pavement. When she saw me, she didn't smile right away. Just breathed out, like she'd been holding it in for too long. You came back, she said. I never really left. I answered. We sat together without talking for a while. The world outside blurred again, headlights streaking past, the faint hum of late-night traffic. Her hand was resting on the table, and when I reached across, she didn't pull away. Our fingers fit quietly, naturally, like they'd been trying to find each other for a long time. She glanced down at our hands, then said, "You make everything complicated." I smiled. "You make it worth it." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're too young to mean that." "Maybe," I said. "But I do." Her eyes met mine, steady, searching, no longer afraid. "Do you ever think about what people would say?" "Every day," I admitted. "But when I'm with you, it stops mattering." Her thumb brushed lightly across my knuckles. "That's dangerous." "So are you." Something shifted then, the kind of silence that doesn't need words to explain itself. She leaned in, not to kiss me, but to rest her forehead against mine. The warmth of her skin, the faint smell of rain still in her hair, everything about her felt familiar now, not forbidden. "I don't know what happens next," she whispered. "Neither do I," I said. "But I know where I want to start." Her breath trembled out, half a sigh, half a laugh. "You're impossible." "And you're here," I said. That made her smile, a real one this time, unguarded. The kind that comes from surrender, not defeat. When we left the bar, she slipped her arm through mine. The rain had stopped, the street glistening under the yellow glow of the lamps. We walked slowly, no destination, no hurry. Just the sound of our steps matching, and the quiet ease of something that finally didn't need to hide. Before we parted, she reached up and pressed her lips softly to my forehead, a gesture that said more than a kiss ever could. "Don't forget this," she whispered. "I couldn't if I tried." She smiled again, and for the first time, either of us looked away.